So I don't know about you, but I've been struggling a bit lately when it comes to doing things exciting and different, and to use the overused word innovative within both my professional but also personal life. So I've been kind of reading and searching, looking for a bit of inspiration, not looking for a silver bullet, but is there anything that I can just try? And there's something I came across that I thought was worth shooting a very quick video and sharing with you, because it's not rocket science, and it's actually, I think, a bit of fun if you allow it to be. And it's essentially Google's innovation strategy, or what used to be their innovation strategy before all of the tech layoffs and everything. And one of their co-founders, Sergey, had what he called the 10% principle, right? The 10% principle. And basically what it meant is, when you look at how you allocate resources, and we'll talk about a professional context first, you allocate 70% to business as usual, okay? 20% to adjacent business. So anything that could be like on a slight tangent but still related to your core business. And then 10% is completely random, completely unrelated. Like, throw a dart somewhere into the darkness, and whatever it lands on, go spend time and money on that, right? So that's almost risk, complete risk. And what they found with this kind of 70-20-10 makeup is that they've been doing this since, 2010, even earlier, right? They found that the net outcome was everything kind of rose and did better overall in terms of the profitability even of their business at Google. And I found that fascinating. I was like, oh, okay. Is it just because the 10% projects every now and then they had a screamer and it did really well? Or was there an overall kind of culture or, excitement and energy within the core business as well, because they got to do weird and freaky stuff? So they actually called the incubator Area 120. And that's kind of where employees all got to spend 20% of their time working on these side projects, the 10% risk for the wider business. And they called it Area 120 because they joked that, well, it's actually, they're working 120% of their hours because they're doing their core job and also that. So I found it fascinating because I'm like, hey, could you imagine because right now I run a business, a pretty large one, and when we have a resource allocation, if I just said to, hey, everyone, we're going to start spending 10% of this on completely random shit, obviously I'd have to pitch it differently, but you kind of get the picture. Or if I look at it on a personal perspective, hey, out of the 7 days a week, I'm going to take whatever that 10% equivalent, right? I can't do that mental arithmetic right now, but let's just say I'm going to take enough hours worth a day to just allocate to do completely random shit, whether it's hobby related, whether it's self-development, whether blah. It's kind of wacky, right? Because we're like, oh, I would never do that, or why would you do that? There's too much risk, there's too much unknown, but I think it's pretty cool. So I did a bit of research on some examples from Google. What are some of the wins and what are some of the failures? And I think I'll start with the failures, actually. I was going to start with wins, but I'll start with failures, because you may know some of them if you're my age. If you're 40 or 40 plus, you'll know a bunch of these failures, actually. The first one that I looked up was Google Wave, which was in 2012. And this was basically, a really confusing email software package system. They just tried to do too much at once, so it kind of flopped. But they put a significant amount of push and time behind it. Another one was Google Plus in 2019, which was their version of trying to compete with Facebook. Didn't work. I wrote Project Shoelace here already in 2020, sorry. It was pretty much their way of trying to do Meetup, but then it got canned because it happened right when COVID hit. So that could have actually been a pretty cool one if they gave it some oxygen, but it was just poor timing, right? Kind of like my startup 2Space, a big reason why even, when we sold it after hitting the $10 million valuation failing was because it was right around the time where COVID hit and we turned restaurants into co-working spaces, right? So both office and food and beverage, it was no bueno during COVID, right? And another failure is Keen, which only recently got axed, and it was pretty much like a Pinterest clone, where they were going to leverage AI so that depending on where you were with friends, it would recommend you interesting things that you could be keen on, right? And that got axed. And unfortunately, to my comment earlier, a lot of this Area 120, the projects and everything, got cancelled because of the tech layoffs, because of where the economy is at and post-COVID. But before I go to the wins, that doesn't mean we don't look at 7-20-10, because what's really important is that if you ever want to admire or look to someone and be like, hey, I would like to emulate some of your behavior, not copy, because I don't think you should ever copy someone, but take inspiration from it. You shouldn't be looking at what they're doing now after being successful, right? You should be looking at what they did to get to that point. Because whatever they're doing now is working for them, but they're already there. So their behavior's changed very likely, or they've adapted to their new environment, their new success, and that's what works for them. You know, they don't have the same routines that they had when they were hustling and trying to get to that point in the first place. You need to look at the rise and not where they are. So even if they're not doing 70-20-10, the 10% principle, Area 120 now, they did it before and it helped them, right? So some of the Google wins, like some of these you're going to be like, oh, holy shit, right? I would never have known. An obvious one is Google News. That was part of the 10% bucket. You know, they weren't really big on news, but they did it, which is a success. AdSense was their way of just doing digital advertising via their browsers and their website, where publishers got paid on clicks. And that was in 2003. So Google News 22. And the funny thing is that after 2 years, it was accounting for 15% of their revenue, their entire business revenue. So that was a knockout of the park, right? Project Aloud is active, which is pretty cool. It's leveraging AI whether it's on YouTube or whatever, where it can read the lips of someone and then change the language. So I think that's a really cool project that's still live. So it's still there, still happening, the 10%. The big one that I use, and a lot of you use, is Gmail. That was founded in 2004. That was not business as usual. It was not adjacent. It was in the 10% bucket. And it's like, if you ask people, you know, what do they think about when you talk about Google, Gmail's probably up there as one of them. So it's pretty wild how it came from the 10%, right? I'd also like to think one of the wins was that movie, The Internship, with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. One of the 10% ideas, let's invest in a movie, right? Or produce it. Because I remember watching it and wanting to apply for a job there. So it definitely would have helped their brand and in their war of talent. Anyway, so that's it. Like, that's the 70-20-10, the 10% principle. And for me, professionally, how am I going to apply it to my day job where I work in commercial real estate? What's something that's completely random? I mean, I've already kind of been doing it, but I'm going to lean into it more, and it's content creation. I believe in long-form, authentic content, not necessarily to drive leads, but to build authenticity and trust. Because when you look at the products I deal with in the deal flow, you know, they take 12, 18 months to come into fruition, and it's a lot of money being thrown around. So I think trust is really important. And rather than do your traditional commercial real estate comms, I'm doing YouTube videos and stuff. You'll see I've got a very small other channel, but I do like 30-minute videos where I just walk through the feasibility of setting up a co-working business for a commercial real estate landlord, kind of like this. And I don't edit it or cut it or anything. It's like, it's all real, you know? And in personal life, what could I apply the 70-20-10 in? I don't know. I'll let you know. I'll have a think. You know, I've been fascinated with mortality lately, not in a morbid way, but I lost my mum when I was really young, as well as my best friend, my grandma more recently, and had a very close scare with my dad only about a month ago. And it's just got me thinking about that stuff, especially because I've got a son now. So maybe it's the midlife crisis thing, because I'm almost 40, right? But the psychologist Carl Jung, which I probably have said many times in my videos, is life begins after 40. Everything before that is research. Because at 40, you don't care what people think. You realize you've only got a certain amount of time in this world, so you just do what you want to do, and you spend time with the people that you want to spend with. So if you're young and you're watching this, which is my main demographic, enjoy it. Make mistakes. Do whatever the fuck you want. You've got so much time. Your superpower is not knowing how hard it is going to be to do the thing that you're probably trying to want to do. So you just do it, and you get the scar tissue, and you build the resilience from that experience. And then when you hit my age, or if you're older watching this, You're living the peak moment of your life. Go enjoy it. Take that 10%, 70, 20, 10. Go do something random this weekend. Okay? Well, thanks for listening and good luck. You got this, and I'll speak to you again soon.